questions?
I've got a bunch of different things on my mind. One of them feels like, I don't know, it's taking up a lot of mind space in a way, even though I'm not actively trying to think about it, but the political climate seems to just always pop up, and it is one thing after another.
Yes, and part of that is the way we get our information now.
Right.
The political climate was equally, if not worse. I mean, it's probably neck and neck in the 60s when the country was really divided, violently divided on the Vietnam War, and buildings were being bombed, students were being shot. It was really bad. But we didn't have the social media. And so this is like in your face constantly, and people make money from the clicks.
Right.
And so I think that's exacerbating it. And you probably do well to pick a little area that you want to be concerned with. I mean, this is one suggestion. Just focus on that. Maybe education, maybe the safety net, maybe something else, and not get swept away by all of it. Because have you noticed that there's no longer news? I'm a boomer, so I keep track of what my other boomer friends watch.
Yeah.
By occasionally watching the network news. And they kept covering, it's just catastrophe, from all over the world.
Right. But that's been
like that for a while. Plane crashes in Bangladesh, we know about it.
Yeah.
So, it's just part of the painful transition we're going through as we start to get smarter about how to deal with these incredibly interesting new things that are evolving. Yeah.
So I guess on that, there's different things I want to touch on this, but the first one, that on social media, this keeps coming up for me, and a few weeks ago I spent a week off Twitter.
How'd that feel?
So one. A bunch of things I noticed. One, like, I didn't delete the Twitter app. I still had it on my phone. I just made a commitment to not go on it. And throughout the week, there'd be times where I'd just be sitting there, like with a gap in things I was doing, and I'd automatically pull out my phone and open Twitter, and I'd catch myself and be like, hey,
Twitter fills. It fills in the little crevices.
Yeah.
There's a commercial on if you're waiting for a bus,
Yeah, exactly. But then you get sucked in. But then I don't know, I spent some time on some other ones as well. So I kind of just filled that space with other things that may or may not have been better.
Instagram?
Yeah.
That's not much of an improvement.
I know, so I feel like I need to do it again, but be more comprehensive with.
Well, wouldn't it make more sense to limit your intake? It's not inherently bad, and you need to curate your timeline.
Right. That's why it's so difficult.
Yeah. So
because
go ahead.
That's why it's so difficult, because it's not like it doesn't. Because I don't want to just clean cut it. I want to use it for. There's a Sufi story pops into my mind. The one with where he asks him if he can make a fence that allows his chickens to go in the other yard, but not let the other chickens in.
Oh yeah. Do you remember that? Do you have that anywhere? I haven't thought of that one in a little while. Do you know where you saw it?
Let me see.
That's a good one, and I haven't used it in teaching because it's not one of the ones that stuck for me. By the way, what he's referring to, folks, is there's a corpus of about 20 Sufi books written by really the teacher of the age of the 20th century, a guy named Idris Shah. And this guy was a really interesting man. He had a great sense of humor, and he wrote about 3 joke books. He wrote histories of different things and covered wars. But what his major work, though, was introducing the West to what Sufism actually is. There's a lot of misconception. People think Sufis and they think twirling dervishes and things like that. And that's really just grotesquely oversimplified and just misunderstands the whole thing. And in this day and age, when there's so much tension between, the different Abrahamic religions, the Muslims, the Jews, the Christians, it's really wonderful to at least educate yourself about the incredibly rich tradition that's handed down to us by the Sufis, the Persian Sufis, the Spanish ones, and to a lesser extent, there's some Arab. I mean, it's the whole Muslim world. But at any rate, it's really worth Westerners learning about. Did you find it?
I'm still looking.
All right. Well, I'll keep talking then.
Yeah.
And so one of the ways that he taught was he took these extraordinary teaching tales, stories from the huge library of such stories in Islam, and remember that we're all in this together. The Christians the Muslims translated the Greek into Arabic and preserved it. Otherwise, I think it would have gone. Well, we would have lost it into Alexandria or something. And then the Irish monks, the Christian monks, then translated it back into Latin, or I think they probably translated it into Latin or something like that. And there's much more to this, the history of all of this. But one of the things we've lost in the modern world is we've forgotten how much we owe in so many ways to these to many ancient cultures, but in particular, the physicians, the poets, the writers, the jokesters, we forget what we owe to the golden age of Persia as we try and bomb it, for probably about the 3rd or 4th time in my lifetime. At least it feels that way. So, did you find it yet?
No, I'm making.
Now, for example, the most popular poet in the West is a Sufi, Rumi. And if you read Al-Ghazali, or if you read Averroes, there's some wonderfully astute minds that have huge contribution to science, to medicine, to poetry, and of course to mysticism, that come from this segment of the world's history. And so I recommend it. Now, if you're just mildly interested, you could read the joke books of Nasruddin that Shah prepared. If you're more academically inclined, and I suggest, even if you're not, there's a book called The Sufis, which just gives a history of Sufism in the world, and that's authoritative and really worth having in your library. And then if you're more interested in mystical studies, there's a whole series of books to be read in order to prepare your mind for these kinds of learnings. And so I guess you've heard me go on and on about the Avatamsaka, or the Flower Ornament Sutra. You've heard me talk about many Zen books. But lately I haven't talked much about the Sufi corpus as represented by Idris Shah, an extraordinary. He was the son of the British ambassador to the Afghani ambassador to Britain. And it's a really extraordinary life's work. And so if you have any questions, just let me know or let us know. And if not, you can just go into the books yourself, and then you may have questions. All right. No luck?
I think I found it.
Okay. We read it just to refresh everybody's memory.
Let's see. I just want to make sure the source is right.
The other thing these guys do is they don't put tables of contents oftentimes because they don't want you using table of contents. They want you to read the book. And they're very, very sophisticated in their teaching methods. And one of the things that's most remarkable about them in their teaching methods is they won't just drone on and on and on and on in the same way about the same subject. Instead, they'll mix in things like recipes and jokes and deep philosophical texts, and then more, travel tips, and what it does is it keeps the brain from settling into a stupor, which you could get if you're just reading the same kind of material for any length of time. Now, the way the Buddhists in the first and second centuries dealt with this was they said, yeah, we don't mind if your mind goes into a trance, but we're going to control the contents of the trance. And so there's different ways to use these things, but both of them had extraordinary appreciation for very subtle psychological principles. And so even as a mind scientist, a neuroscientist, and a psychiatrist, I have to recommend the Sufi books because they're so psychologically sophisticated. They comprehensively go through all of the ego mechanisms of defense and all of the mechanisms of rationalization. And they teach them to you, but they do it in such a manner that your ego doesn't put up a wall. So you can actually learn this stuff. And, if I have any contribution before I croak, it would be, hey, folks, we really need to look at some of the work that's come before us. And we'll find that oftentimes they have much to teach us, and we can avoid a lot of unnecessary spinning wheels in circles if we could just stop long enough to realize that a lot of work has been done for us by people in the past. And then that maybe that will inspire somebody to do the same thing for the people of the future. Because this stuff is going to become much more important as we no longer let's say the AI guys are right and we no longer need to work except voluntarily because there's a massive economic growth. Then man's need for meaning, man's search for meaning comes to the forefront. And so this is really a worthwhile thing to spend a lifetime on. Any luck?
So I've found the story. It's in the World of Nasruddin.
Okay.
And I have it quoted here by the LLM. I don't have the book on me right now. So it might be paraphrased a bit, but I can read it.
Okay.
So a man boasts that he has become Nasruddin's disciple after seeing the mullah pluck food and wine out of thin air. He begs Nasruddin to teach him the secret. Nasruddin says, "Very well. Choose the easy task or the hard one." The disciple says, "Give me the hard one." And Nasruddin says, "Go home and cut a hole in your fence big enough for your chickens to slip into your neighbor's garden and eat his crops, but not big enough for his chickens to slip through and eat yours. When you have solved that, come back, then you will be ready for some magic."
Excellent. Excellent. And so by contemplating that idea and saying, well, are we talking about chickens or are we talking about thoughts? Are we talking about propaganda? Are we talking about doing something to someone else that we don't always invariably end up doing to ourselves? Right?
Mm-hmm.
When we accuse others, are we accusing ourselves? And there's a whole range of associations that come from something like that. That's a pretty rich one because it's very, very, it's wide open.
What do you mean?
So, I mean, maybe in the context of what's around it in that book, World of Nazar Deen, which, by the way, was posthumous, posthumous, right? So it's not one of Idris Shah's teaching books per se while he was alive, but be that as it may, depending on what you could think of, we could probably do it right now. Think of 10 different contexts in which that kind of problem arises. Or 10 different situations where you may think that you're getting away with, doing something against somebody and not equally harming yourself or helping yourself.
Right.
And so it speaks to net of Indra, the net of Indra, Indra. That model where everything affects everything else, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it could relate to karma. It probably has something. It might have something to do with mathematics. I don't know, but it's just a very, very rich place to stop and to contemplate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I remember when I first read it, I didn't understand it.
Well, they're not meant to be understood in that manner necessarily.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a little bit funny, that one, right?
Yeah.
The idea that you're going to have a hole in your fence that only allows your chickens to go steal grain from your neighbor, but not allow his to come steal from yours.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's fairly superficial. But then the way one thinks about it, and this is for this one in particular, it's to like open it up and just have that image in your mind. And then someday you'll be working on something, I don't know, an insurance plan. You could be working on a medical shunt, right?
Mm-hmm.
For something. You could be working on charities. You could be working on, understanding karma. You could be working on psychological projection, right?
Yeah.
Is there something I can project on my brother or my sister that I don't end up either projecting directly or inversely to myself over a period of time? Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm.
It's almost like a law of physics. But now there may be something else. Maybe there is such a whole.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't thought about it yet. So even in engineering, I mean, there are pipes that only allow water to flow in one direction.
Yeah. There's cat doors that only let your cat go in and out, but not raccoons.
They don't let raccoons out? They don't let raccoons in, right?
They don't let raccoons in, yeah.
Yeah, so okay, so there's so many levels of which to think of this.
Mm-hmm.
But in the story, he says, make a hole, right?
Yeah.
In a fence. So, at any rate, these are just, and who knows, I'm just barely remembering this, and I know why, because it's from that book as opposed to the other books. So I don't know what else is going to come to mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so the same thing, so that's how you think about some of these stories. You don't try to solve it like a Zen koan. They're not like that.
Mm.
Like, for example, remember when the Sufi master asked the disciples to climb a wall with their donkeys?
I don't remember that one.
Okay, well, it's important that you do.
Okay.
And all of the disciples basically just gave up, except for one. No, I think they were attempting. They were screening people for discipleship, and they asked them to climb a wall. I believe with their donkeys, and 9 out of 10 just said, "Well, this is ridiculous. It's impossible. I'm not going to even try."
Mm-hmm.
But one of the would-be students, kept working at it, trying to figure out something. There must be some way. And so he was accepted for discipleship.
Right.
and the others were dismissed.
Right.
So the moral of that particular story is pretty straightforward, right?
Yeah.
You do what the Sufi master instructs.
Yeah.
You do your best and you keep trying, and he'll let you know when to stop. I mean, it's the right attitude, right?
Right.
It's the right mental attitude. Okay, what's next?
Well, I guess just tying this back to the social media, then the question is, how do you use social media in a way that is valuable to you but doesn't get you sucked in and affect you?
Well, you curate the hell out of your feed as much as you can.
Mm-hmm.
You block like crazy. They have the little thing up in the right-hand corner that says, I'm not interested in this tweet. I never want to see a tweet like this again. And I want to, I don't like this person either, and I don't want to see him again, right?
Yeah. Have you been successful with that on Twitter?
Yeah, fairly successful.
Mm.
And then, then you learn, and then you learn that there's certain things that, as much as they're enticing to your animal brain, or your curiosity or whatever, you don't have the time.
Yeah.
And the yield is too low, so you just skip over that.
Right.
And then you notice what you pay attention to and what you don't pay attention to. Because you think about some of these algorithms, they're like mirrors. I had someone recently, it was a woman, interesting. She says, there's so much violence on my X feed. Mm-hmm. It's just people fighting. That's all that's on there.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously she'd spent too much time watching people fight.
Mm-hmm.
And so it gives her more, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So, I mean, there's ways that you can, just get the news and then just get philosophical quotes. I mean, there's ones for Socrates, ones for, Aristotle, for every Greek philosopher's got their own Twitter handle.
Yeah.
So, but better just to have something more important to do in your life than sit there and watch other people yell at each other.
Yeah, definitely.
And then you'll find that naturally you don't spend as much time on it.
Yeah.
Or you can just set limits. Or you can say, well, I'll look at it twice a day, but no earlier than an hour after I wake up. And no later than an hour before I go to bed.
Mm-hmm.
And you can play around with it, do all kinds of things.
Yeah, I guess I need to play around with it more because I've tried a few things so far, and
and then eventually we're going to have AI filters where we're going to say, I want no politics, I want no conflicts or fights, I want no this or that.
Yeah, so
and you can see that's where we're headed, right?
Well, yes and no. I think I'm worried right now that where we're headed is that it's just going to be optimized to make money, right? And the companies have no incentive of giving you options to protect yourself. They're
you have your own personal AI that will say, hey, my master does not like watching this crap, so I'll take care of it. Right?
I mean,
this can't go on abusing the mind of the human for, in order to get the capital to build more AIs.
Right.
Which is really what they're doing right now, right?
Right.
So, that can't go on infinitely.
I hope not.
It won't. I've been around for a while. I've seen so many different models of media.
Mm-hmm.
And recently I've been watching old films.
Oh, yeah.
And it's very interesting. These things were censored like crazy. If there was a murder and the murderer didn't get punished, they wouldn't distribute it.
But who regulated that?
Well, there were different boards in Hollywood and in Britain, and they had to approve something for public consumption.
Mm-hmm.
And they had some very interesting restrictions. And then later it became the board of, PG 14, R and X. That was later. That was like in the 70s, I think.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking about
and
that.
An X-rated movie won the Oscar for Best Picture. So that kind of screwed that up a bit. But they all kinds of things like Midnight Cowboy. They had to censor that.
I went to the movies recently, and all the trailers were just like all these movies that were just like gory or.
Yeah, they have to turn it up.
Right.
And then sooner or later, it just gets so ridiculous, you just lose all taste for that. You don't want to see it. Same thing like with these AIs. Have you noticed how everything looks like it's made by an AI now?
Yeah.
All the thumbnails.
Yeah.
And half the YouTubes.
Yeah.
Well, soon people are going to get very sick of that.
Mm-hmm.
And they're going to want something else, right? Or something better. There's a movie I think I may have recommended to you, which with no CGI. What was it called?
The one you sent me recently?
Yeah, because I thought you would enjoy it.
I haven't watched it yet, but
I got some good feedback on it from other people.
The Fall, a 2006 movie called The Fall.
Yeah. Anyway, shot in 20 countries with no CGI.
Mm.
And then when you see how beautiful the world is actually, the CGI just seems cheesy.
Yeah.
Or maybe it's just me, but
I think
just get sick of the
that's
same
true
thing over
because
and over.
There's movies like Star Wars where the first ones were made without, it was all costumes instead of CGI, and those ones they age better than the CGI ones. And
that's interesting.
In a way.
Yeah.
Another one came to mind, but I just lost it.
The Sufis understood that a teaching effort, a teaching impulse going into a culture had to be very sensitive to the time and the place and the nuances of that culture. And so what will be appropriate for, real Sufis in the 21st century will be very different than what they did in the 20th century.
Right.
Or what they did in the 19th.
Right. Going back to the politics issue, so I was saying how my mind feels like bombarded by it, and part of me just wants to ignore it completely to be clean from it. But then I was reading the Dao De Jing, and I was at the end of it, and some of the last chapters, and there's a lot of chapters in it that are in a way political and talk about government.
No, absolutely. It's a handbook for rulers too. Yeah, go ahead.
Right. And so I guess my question there is like, what role does like politics play in the Tao and Dharma, if it does?
Well, humans must take care of not only themselves but each other.
Mm-hmm.
And doing that is not an easy thing to do. I mean, Freud said there were 3 possible professions. The first one was raising a child. The second one was governing a nation. And the third, of course, was psychoanalysis. Mm-hmm. But my point is this, is that as humans, we must take care of not just ourselves, but each other, mm-hmm. who are ourselves, right? Mm-hmm. Now, for most of us, that doesn't mean getting into politics, but it means like at least voting correctly if you have that opportunity, or at least, understanding the limitations of any political action. It's going to be limited in time, how useful it's going to be. But there is a place in it for some people. And for a young man, I think, to learn about the world, because especially in a world of rapid transition like this one, and a world where there's so much unnecessary suffering, it behooves a person, not everyone, not even necessarily most people, but some people, to pay attention, at least for a while, and to be able to contribute intelligently, constructively, or if nothing else, to counter some of the absolute inanity that passes for political thinking in this day and age. I mean, look at our education system. In California, half the kids don't finish high school. In other parts of the country, you can graduate high school and read at a fourth grade level. I mean, those are, I don't know if you call that politics, but it is, in a way, that's politics.
Right.
I mean, it's got to be fixed.
Right.
Look at Medicaid, where so much of it is just stolen.
Yeah.
So, I mean, if you're someone who likes AI, I mean, that's a problem waiting to be fixed. And it can be fixed with AI, or there's a million things like that. So ultimately, of course, render to Caesar that which is Caesar's, and your highest priority must be your own soul, your own spiritual development.
Yeah.
And if it's interfering with that, then you need to ask yourself why, and maybe you need to drop it.
Yeah.
But it's an aspect of the world that's still there, and Buddhists and Sufis are both deeply involved. They don't advertise that they're Buddhists or Sufis, but they're working for the welfare of the world.
Right.
So there's no simple, easy answer. But life is not simple and easy in modern time. Or I don't know if it's ever been that way. So does that answer that question more or less?
Yeah, more or less. There's this chapter.
Look at the Dalai Lama. The Dalai Lama is like, he has to deal with not only the spiritual leadership of Buddhism, but also with the pragmatic, political things he has to deal with. Like, where's the next Dalai Lama coming from?
Right.
And since that's by the mechanism of reincarnation, he's got to go around some pretty sharp corners there.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. I was just reading this chapter in the Dao De Jing. A small state has few people.
Yeah.
Can I read it?
Yeah, please do.
Okay. A small state has few people. It has the people keep arms, but not use them. It has them regard death gravely and not go on distant campaigns. Even if they have vehicles, they have nowhere to drive them. Even if they have weapons, they have nowhere to use them. It has the people go back to simple techniques, relish their food, like their clothes, be comfortable in their ways, and enjoy their work. Neighboring states may be so close they can hear each other's dogs and roosters, but they can make it so that the people have never gone back and forth.
Yeah.
So, I mean, reading this, it just feels like everything is backwards right now. Like, completely.
Everything is backwards right now.
And it's very...
And I think we're going to have to relearn that, so the ideal human community is not millions of people. It's probably not more than a few hundreds of people. The ideal human community. Now, some people know this. I'm thinking right now of the not the Quakers. Who are the other
Amish?
ones? The who? Say
the Amish?
The Amish. Who, we may laugh at them because they don't use modern machinery, or they wear funny clothes or whatever. But if you really analyze Amish life, it is a lot healthier, and it's maybe warmer, and I can't speak to it authoritatively. I've only visited with them once or twice, and it's certainly more connected, and so on and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And Thomas Clary, may he rest in peace, when he was alive, was always advocating for smaller communities where you could manage these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so, as the population grows, then the potential problems, it's an exponential, I think.
Yeah.
And so now remember, the Dao De Jing was written during the era, the epoch of the Warring States, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it's speaking to ideals here. Yeah, we shouldn't be concerned with what's going on in Turkestan or in Korea, North Korea, or in parts of the world that really have nothing to do with us. But see, the way the world is organized now, that's just not kind of a quaint and totally unthinkable set of circumstances. Although in the future we may have smaller tribes rather than these, trying to take over the whole world and give it one world government. You know what I'm saying? I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
What the future holds. But the point is that that's one way of looking at it that makes sense and that people have some experience with. They also say that governing a nation is like cooking a small fish.
Yeah.
You do as little as possible, and you do it very carefully, right?
Yeah.
But these are more like ideals rather than just prescriptions, I think, at least in 2025.
Yeah.
Some of them could be prescriptions, but most of them, I think, are just like, hey, think about this other way of organizing yourself.
Right. I've taken up pottery this past year, and there's just something about making something, like, it's so simple. You're just making items from mud, but it's the most satisfying thing.
I saw a brilliant Japanese movie called Ugetsu.
Oh yeah.
Have you seen it?
No.
I think it was done in like 1940 or something like that. Very, very influential on Scorsese and on Kurosawa.
Cool.
Apparently, Scorsese would screen this movie before filming some of his movies. He'd screen it to his crew, and there's quite a bit of pottery making in it. It's quite extraordinary.
Cool. I'll check it out.
But yeah, pottery, anything you can get your hands on like that, anything that gets you outside of your house or apartment or whatever, and you learn something new in a new environment with a new context or whatever, is going to be good for you these days. And there's a lot of young men and women that need to get out of their apartments and need to do something different. Go to the animal shelter and say hello to the dogs, or go to the aquarium, or do something. Go pick some cherries, or do some pottery. Perfect. Learn to surf. Learn about trees. Anything having to do with anything other than the screens and the transistors.
Yeah.
Because in the final analysis, nature is our only sane system. Self-healing, self-replicating, growing, unfolding.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, and so that's why the Dao De Jing is such a powerful finger pointing towards the obvious.
Unfortunately, I've found that YouTube has been by far the best resource for learning, at least this for me right now, the pottery. So I've just been doing it.
Why is that unfortunate?
Oh, because I don't go out of my house to do it.
Oh, you're making pottery in your house?
Yeah.
Oh, man. What are you making it out of?
I go out of the house to buy the equipment, but I do it at home.
Oh, man. All right. Never mind. No, you can still, that's something at least.
Yeah.
Tactile.
Yeah.
And if possible, humans need to have animal companions.
Yeah.
Or plant companions, but anything it becomes really, really obvious as you get older and as you get older, that the only real sanity, the only real thing that works is nature.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else is like the mind of man or the mind of the machine. And those are so grossly impoverished compared to, just a few trees or, flowers or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
And so it's good to get out of the house, not just away from Twitter, but out of the house.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
here I am preaching again. But okay, what's next? Maybe some Dharma.
Yeah. So on the Dharma side, one thing on my mind I've noticed, I've got this feeling of like, I don't know how to describe it exactly, but every time we meet, I feel like almost guilty or something that I haven't, achieved Satori yet. But then at the same time, I can recognize it, and I feel like that feeling is probably not useful. If anything, it would block me from making progress.
It depends. It depends on how hard you're working on it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not here to I'm here to tell you that if you want Satori, it has to be the highest priority.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not here to tell you that you should have Satori. I mean, I would wish it on anyone, right?
Right.
But I can't. My job is not to make you realize how valuable it is and how you can't get there except by making it the most important thing in your life. Yeah. That's all I can say, right? Beyond that, I can't. And also, it's not my business in a way.
Mm-hmm.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
My business is to say that it's there, to give some idea of what it's worth. And then if people are interested, to give them the methods. But then when it comes to the actual heart, mind, body, and soul, this is the only thing, or almost the only thing that I care about.
Mm-hmm.
And it matters more to me than anything else. That's something I can't impart.
Yeah. So that one, I guess I have a little bit of conflict, like inner conflict about that, because when I sit down and really think about it, it becomes obvious that it's the most important thing. But then during the day-to-day life, when I get distracted in things, or life is really good right now, and so
maybe you haven't suffered enough.
Right.
Don't worry, life will is, you never know when, you never know how, but life will take you and just body slam you into the pavement.
And,
right?
Yeah, and it has, and there's been periods where it feels like the most urgent thing, and then there's other periods where it's less urgent. It's always like top of mind, but.
Did you see my tweet on that very subject?
Which one?
I think it's about 3 tweets ago. Could you look? This world
The whole Earth is an eon of hell.
Go ahead. Read it slowly for whoever's listening.
The whole Earth is an eon of hell. It will not do to while away your time.
Right. Okay. The whole world is an eon of hell. It will not do to while away your time. Yeah, you do not want to be in the situation, and all I can do here is, you don't want to be an old man at the end of your life and look back and say, "Oh, I wish I had done this or I'd done that."
Yeah.
And you do want to be an old man or an old lady that says, "Hey, well, I lived that life. I gave it all I had. I did my best, at least some of the time." Right?
Mm-hmm.
And some people have to spend a lot of time as old people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that gives them plenty of time to reflect on their lives. And you just don't want to be in a situation where you regret something that you could have done then, but you can't do now.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
But again, it's not my job to and plus I can't do it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
To get you to understand that. But I feel like as an old man, I feel like I should warn people what happens in life.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing particularly esoteric about that. So if it's not this thing, it should be some other thing. But give this life your best, at least in some things.
Yeah, of course.
And I feel like saying, give it your best in all things. And that can be done too.
Mm-hmm.
And then there are people who have lived before us, who have thought about this and lived lives, and they've written about it over generations, right?
Yeah.
And some of their work has been handed down to us. In a way, it's unfortunate. It's so easy to get all this stuff now that people take it for granted. But, it's just an old man talking to a young one, that's all.
Well, I guess this question, like, with this feeling of, like, almost like dissatisfaction with myself, is this something that I can use, or is this something that is blocking?
Sure, it's something you could use. I mean, it's basically you're being warned. It's not a pleasant feeling, is it?
No.
All right. Well, suffering is a warning.
Mm.
That's dukkha, right? That's just the chronic dissatisfaction with life,
mm-hmm.
or the desire to be someplace else, doing something else. Those are warnings that you're not here now fully.
Mm.
And to be present fully, so that there's episodes in your life when you're present fully.
Mm-hmm.
When you're at the top of a ski slope, right? And you're about to go down, or you're about to hit another car in a car accident, or you're, getting ready for the whatever competitive sports you're doing, or you're on stage and there's 1 million people cheering you on, right?
Yep.
And you're 100% there.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, your mind is 100% not there.
Yeah.
Because you're wrapped in being. You should live as much of your life like that as you can.
Is it possible to always be in that state, or is it just natural to cycle in and out of it?
Sure, it is possible. And the closer you are to that, the closer you are to the teachings of Jesus or the teachings of Buddha.
Mm.
And what you're doing is according with the way. Now, that doesn't mean anything. Like I just listed off a bunch of dramatic scenarios, top of a ski slope, or racing cars, or something like that. But that's for the Americans, right? Because we need such intense exposure. I mean, it's not even real to us if it's not very, very, very stimulating.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't need to be that way. And as you get older, and wiser, then those things will also lose their appeal, although you can remember them fondly. But now what you want is just peace.
Yeah.
And you can't put a price on peace.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so what you're telling me is that you don't have peace yet.
Yeah.
And I agree, but that's a signal that maybe you should do something differently.
Mm.
All right, sir?
Yeah.
Anything else before we stop?
There's one thing I had noticed from Instant Zen. There was a line where he says Buddhism is conservation of energy, I think.
Yes. Yeah, this is. I mean, just think of. You can say Buddhism. You can say martial arts. You can say Daoism. If you accord with the way, that you use the minimum amount of energy necessary. I mean, that's one level.
Yeah.
So, if see the energy that you spend being conflicted,
yeah,
or being dissatisfied,
yeah,
is energy that could be used in another direction according with the way,
mm-hmm.
and then there's no effort at all.
Right.
And so, and then going back to my very crude examples, when you're going down that black slope on your skis and you know what you're doing, you're using the minimum amount of energy you need, right?
Yeah.
When you're on a stage and there's a million people watching and singing along or whatever, you may be using tons of energy, but it's the minimum necessary to do what you're doing.
Mm.
So there's a conservation of energy. And then in less,
it's efficient.
Histrionic examples, then when you're walking around, looking at your garden or looking at in the park or whatever, you're using the least energy you need because your mind isn't going a mile a minute, worried about, oh my God, the Deutschmark is going to collapse in Germany or something like that. You're not scatterbrained.
Yeah.
So in Buddhism, the least amount of energy.
Okay.
And conservation of energy. By the way, that's a whole other way of looking at all of this. And one that I have not emphasized, but there's another way to look at it in terms of energetics.
Right.
And so every see, the way they refer to it is as leaks of energy.
Yeah.
So if you get on Twitter and you find yourself just scrolling, you're leaking energy.
Yeah.
All right, sir?
Yep.
Okay. Anything else?
No.
All right. Vaya con Dios.
All right. Thank you.
Take good care of it. All right. Ciao.